if we fight the Jews for their aqidah, why do we fight them in the Muslim lands? Because they don't pay the jizya. What's the exception now? This is an issue which is an issue that is not understood except by those who are well founded in the manhaj of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And they have firmness upon the Sunnah, and they have a good understanding of the Aqidah and the manhaj of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. As for fighting the Jews, any time the Muslims fight the Jews, then we fight them for the Aqidah. Not because of the land or anything other than this. We fight them for the Aqidah. As a nation, we fight them for the Aqidah. As for not fighting them now, then the reason why the Muslims can't fight them now is because the Muslims don't have the strength. And they don't have the ability. And they are not able in this time. The Muslims themselves are in a state of weakness. The Muslims themselves are being killed and being humiliated and being slaughtered because they have left the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have split up into groups and factions. They have entered into bid'ah. They have earned the humiliation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have earned that which they deserve. They have become the scum on top of the floodwater, as the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. That there will come a time when the disbelievers will take from the lands of the Muslims, like a guest takes from the food plate of the host, from the plate of food of the host. So the companion said, O Messenger of Allah, will we be few in number on that day? He said, no, rather you'll be great in number, but you'll be like the scum on top of the floodwater. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed the fear out of the hearts of the disbelievers that they used to hold. And Allah will throw a wahan, will throw a weakness into your hearts. So the companion said, what is that weakness, O Messenger of Allah? He said, love of life and fear of death. So the disbelievers have taken from the lands of the Muslims. But this is due to the Muslims themselves. That the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the hadith, look at the end of the hadith, he said they will take from the lands of Muslims. Did he say because of the wealth of the disbelievers? Or because of the weaponry of the disbelievers? He mentioned because the Muslims are the scum on top of the floodwater. That's how the Muslims have become today. And this is why the Muslims are being humiliated. So how are the Muslims going to go now and do anything to the Jews? Because the Muslims themselves are upon bid'ah, are upon fisq, are upon misguidance, are upon dalala. Don't know a scholar from a fasiq. Don't know a scholar from a jahil. If a scholar was to die tomorrow, most of the Muslims wouldn't even raise an eyebrow. This is the reality of the Muslims today. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah does not remove knowledge by stripping it from the hearts of the people, but rather Allah removes knowledge by the death of the ulama. So when the ulama pass away, then the people take the juhal as their leaders. And the juhal, they go to the juhal and they ask them. And the juhal give rulings, leading themselves astray and leading the people astray. So we are living in that time. Scholars are few in number. And in fact the kibarul ulama of today that we know of are restricted. Because they weren't restricted in the previous time. Today, in the time that we are living in, probably the first time that the scholars are restricted only to the kingdom, the noble kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the land of Tawheed, the land of Islam. The major scholars are only restricted to this land. As for the rest of the lands like Yemen and Jordan and Kuwait and other lands like this, then la shak that they have mashayikh and they have tullab al-ilm. But none of them are the likes of Sheikh Rabi', Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, Abdul Aziz al-Sheikh, Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, the likes of Ahmed al-Najmi. You don't find them in any other land. Sheikh Ali al-Harbi. You don't find kibar like this in the other lands. So now if you ask the general person in the street to name a single scholar of today, he'll name some Sufi deviant in the local masjid. The great scholar of Philadelphia, or the great scholar of New York, or the great scholar of London. Or some no-legged, no-armed kharji from London. Even in America I heard he's become famous. Abu Hamza al-Misri al-Kharji. The one with no arms and no legs. Hope one day Allah allows his head to be removed also. That this individual and the likes of these individuals have become leaders for these people, that they go to them and they lead themselves astray and they lead others astray. So they make permissible the taking of the lives of the Muslims. They make permissible the killing of the innocent. They make permissible the blowing up of buildings. They make permissible the hijacking of airplanes. They make permissible the hijacking of ships. They make permissible the blowing up of the cities in the Muslim lands and in the non-Muslim lands. They don't distinguish between the child and between the combatant. Juhal cowards, blocking off the lines of communication, so much so that a man cannot travel from one land to another land because of the facade of these people, because of the corruption of these people. And then we're talking about taking jizya from them. You're lucky they're not taking jizya from you. Taking jizya from them. How are you going to take jizya from them? This is not the time for that. This is the time, as Shaykh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani said, rahimahullah ta'ala, and the scholars agreed with him, and they affirmed that with him, that this is a time of tasfiyah and tarbiyah. This is a time of purification and cultivation. This is a time of purifying the religion from that which has been added to it by way of shirk and kufr and bid'ah and the false practices that have entered into Islam. This is a time for this. You're talking about taking jizya from the Jews. There's 1.4 billion Muslims on the earth, and the majority of them are seeking aid from the awliya of Allah, going to the graves of the dead, asking the dead for help. Not only asking the dead for help, asking the animals of the dead, like they do in Egypt and Pakistan and India. One of their saints, so-called, dies upon the back of a donkey. So he falls off the donkey. So they bury him where he died. Then the donkey walks for another 150 kilometers. And the donkey drops dead and dies. So they make a tomb for the donkey that they go and make tawaf around, seeking aid from the dead donkey. And we want to take jizya from the Jews? What jizya are you going to take from the Jews? Where's the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to come when the Muslims are doing this? There are people who go to Medina, to the grave of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and they will make tawaf around the grave. But because they can't make tawaf around the grave, because it's around the building, so they make tawaf around the whole of the masjid. Takes them about 3 days, but they do it. And you're talking about taking jizya? They're making tawaf around the grave of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, calling upon the dead, seeking isti'ana and istighatha, kufr akbar. They're standing by the grave, and the police are just watching them. May Allah reward those police, those who enjoy the good and they forbid the evil. This is the only land amongst all of the lands that has truly established Tawheed and used it as a sign to judge a person's Salafiyah, judge his Sunnah by it. The one who curses the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, speaks against his rulers, then know that he's a heretic, a person of innovation, a person of deviation. The police are watching them, stopping them. Like the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that I am like the one that I am like the one who has built a fire. I am like the one who has built the fire. And the moths or the people are racing towards it. And I'm trying to hold you and pull you back, but you are getting the better of me. That's what those people are like. The police are there, trying to prevent them from shirk. But they stand there and they turn towards the grave, hoping that they're not being watched, and they lower their head. Put their hands, most of them below their navels or by their side. Because they believe that the Wahhabi way to pray is to put hands on the chest. And they'll just sit there or stand there facing the grave of the Messenger of Allah. And if they know that the police are inside, they'll go around the outside of the building. So even in a land where the rulers are preventing shirk, not a single church is to be found in this land, not a single synagogue, not a single Hindu temple, not a single Sikh temple, not a single Buddhist temple is found in this land of Tawheed.